One of the sectors in the Nigerian exchange group that has made so many millionaires from last year, 2025, to this year is the banking sector. Now, this sector has been printing millions for its investors right from the beginning of 2025 till today. And we are saying something that will happen in 2 months from now. It's going to be an explosion, a massive explosion on the floor of the stock exchange. Will you participate? And this is why we are here, to tell you the 4 banking stocks that will do exceedingly great in 2 months from now. And this is where we do it on Clockwise. Welcome to Clockwise. My name is Providence. And today, and this is what we'll be discussing, 4 banking stocks that will do exceedingly great in 2 months from now. And if Dangote lists his refinery stocks on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, they will do far much more better. Now, we are going to show you why we are saying this. We'll teach you the projection. We'll show you what we are seeing for you to see if you can actually participate in them. And as I do this every time, I have my guest that sleeps on the charts and watches the fundamentals of this organization and this company on a daily basis. And today we're doing the analysis with a resounding virtual round of applause. Please welcome Mr. Kanem. Welcome to Clockwise.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, you see, if you look at the charts very well, and I know you do it every time, you will see, I was trying to study something from last year. And I saw that, you see, this sector, the banking sector, have done exceedingly great.
Yes.
Their year-to-date earnings, as at today, is something that has never happened before. And we don't know why this is happening.
Yes.
What do you think are the secret of the success?
Okay. So thank you very much for having me once again, and thank you to the viewers. We are going to unpack what's been happening, particularly in the banking sector. So one of the biggest things that have happened in the banking sector is the recapitalization that we've had, because when you recapitalize, it's actually a demonstration of strength to investors. That banks have the capacity to weather any storm. Yes, you have a lot. There's been a lot of macroeconomic risk we've been dealing with, but with the recapitalized banking sector, that means those systemic risks are kind of shifted forward. You see, the reality is that if you look at most recessions, most economic meltdown, they start in the banking sector. So whenever, for instance, if you look at what happened in 2008, the global economic recession, what happened? There's something called mortgage-backed securities. So these these MBS, some of them were very, very terrible securities that banks actually sat on. So when there's a lot of large-scale defaults in this regard, then what you tend to have is that it affects the banking sector first, because the banks actually are the ones that buy this. They provide this lending facility, and if the debtors fail to pay, which we call loan default, then it brings in systemic risk into the banking sector, and that is that's a recipe for a run on the banks.
So recapitalization
has been the reason why banks have been making a lot of gains. That's one. Number two, I had talked about in the last episode. The market has been very favorable to banks because of what's been happening in the bond market. So the Nigerian banks have made a killing from what has been happening, the arbitrage trading that they have done. Then, of course, a few banks that we're going to mention have actually been expanding into the international space, which is also a signal of strength. When you have this signal of strength, investors are confident to actually invest in these banks.
So that reflects that the economy is becoming better.
It reflects that the monetary policy is actually working. So the CBN has been working on ensuring that inflation is well anchored. So inflation is actually anchored to some extent, which gives investors the confidence that their investments are not going to go down the drain.
Why I ask that question is that let's not be as if it's a particular temporary issue or temporary policy that is actually making them to rise that high?
Well, if you look at most of the banks, a few of the ones that we're going to mention today, if you look at the things like the credit quality, the loan book, their balance sheet, they are pretty decent. These are some of the things that show whether there is weakness. I mean, if you look, even in the US, we have been having issues about private credit and all those kind of risk. In the Nigerian stock market, the Nigerian economy, we don't seem to have that really show at this point, really. So banks have been performing very well because a lot of them have been managing their risk very properly, and they have been benefiting from from the arbitrage that opportunities
All right,
have
let's dive
existed.
deep inside straight. All right, now let's start from the number one bank.
So the first bank I'll mention here is Zenith Bank.
But Zenith Bank has dominated this banking sector for a very long time.
Yeah, Zenith Bank, because of the way they actually manage risk. Zenith Bank has, the currently Zenith Bank is at 78% year to date, and that's been driven majorly because of the international listing that's coming by next year. So Zenith Bank has been performing very well. Zenith Bank has been, if you look at it's like a behemoth. When you look at the credit quality, their loan book is very, very clean. So these are some of the things that signal to investors that the bank is very healthy. And if the bank is very healthy and has a good lending portfolio, meaning that they have an excellent lending portfolio, very minimal bad debt, and then they have a very strong balance sheet. Then, I mean,
What's their position now on the chart?
the position, I mean, Zenith Bank has been on a tier. Zenith Bank, like I told you, year to date, it's 78%. So what that means is that, let's say if you invested in Zenith Bank, let's say if you put in 1 million naira in Zenith Bank in January 1st, you should be sitting on 1.78 million naira at this point. Wow. That's an insane return on investment.
And they'll do more in 2 months from now?
And they will do more, because if you look at in 2 months, we are projecting a lot of things. One of the major thing we are projecting is the Dangote listing. And the Dangote listing, we're talking about a $50 billion company coming into the Nigerian Stock Exchange, as well as the London Stock Exchange. What that means is that that's an insane liquidity coming into the system. International investors coming in to participate in a Nigerian company like Dangote Refinery. What I want to let you know is that Zenith Bank sits at the crux. Zenith Bank is most likely going to handle a lot of those transactions. When you come in, I mean, if you are coming into the Nigerian market to invest, you work with partner banks, a Nigerian bank that actually helps to provide that liquidity. So most of these institutional investors that are coming into to invest in Dangote Refinery will be working through Tier 1 banks like the Zenith Bank. And like I told you, the loan book is very good. The balance sheet is very good. They have a strong, they are recapitalized. The capital base is very, very strong too. So it gives international investors, institutional investors, the confidence to want to work with Zenith Bank. Institutional investors consider how easy it is to access funding, for them to be able to continue their trade in the Dangote Refinery.
From your
investment
analysis, from looking at the charts, is it actually a right time to invest in Zenith Bank as a new investor?
If you look at the charts, we're going to have it on the screen. So if you look at the charts, and I'm going to speak very objectively here, Zenith Bank has done 78%. That's an insane return on investment. We are just 3 months in to the year, and we have already returned 78%. Of course, there is usually some breather. Speaking technically from the charts now, there are a ton of imbalances. What tends to happen? Imbalances are like inefficiencies in the market. Imbalances are like drawdowns. So the way it works, without going very technical, is like this. So you have a consolidation, and then you have what we call initiation. Initiation is actually where the institutional traders rock pools the retail traders, push price above, and then stop out those people that were in short positions. but because of the volume of cash that institutional investors or institutional traders come in with, what they do is that they don't just get into one position, so they buy and sell. That is why you see a consolidation, buying and selling. Then they initiate in the direction they want to move, which is, in this case, they want to go up the bullish direction. And then remember, they still have short position. Now those short positions will be in a very serious drawdown as the price moves up. So one of the things that they do is that when they close their position, they try to push price down so that they can get out of drawdown or be in a minimal drawdown before they close their position. So what I would say is, I personally will be waiting for some retracement.
Okay.
Before I can get into the market, get back into
it. To do very well in 2 months from now.
We will do very well in 2 months from now. But the thing is that this retracement doesn't take so long. It could be in the next couple of weeks or thereabout. As people take profits. If you look at, when like I told you, what is happening now, the price jump now is basically because of investors are trying to price in or re-rate the bank based on the planned international listing.
Okay.
People will definitely take profits, and as they're taking profit, that's a sell out of that position. The price will come down, and then that will provide an opportunity for people to scale back in.
Okay, that's number one.
Then the second bank I'll mention here is Access Bank. Access Bank is, I mentioned them because when it comes to, if we are looking at in the light of what the Dangote refinery listing, which for me is going to be the biggest liquidity event in the history of the Nigerian exchange group. Yes, in the Nigerian stock market. So what we expect is the institutional investors will want to work with banks that have very large asset base, and Access Bank has the largest. Access Bank assets plus deposit is somewhere in the neighborhood of 52 trillion naira. Yes, that's a huge base, and evokes a lot of confidence. Access Bank has presence in a number of African countries. So when you have international presence, it's also a plus to you, because institutional investors want to be able to repatriate funds, to move funds around. They don't want to be stuck in a particular financial institution where there's a lot of hiccups. They need to corresponding banks and all of those hiccups to be able to move funds. But Access Bank is present in a number of countries, which means that institutional investors can move their money around, high volume capital around with minimal friction. So they are going to work with these banks. And what I want to let you know is that whichever bank investors would be working with would have a lot of liquidity. When it has a lot of liquidity, you know what that means? Their loan capacity increases by a long shot. Even their trade capacity, the facilitating trade for them is also higher. Access to FX is also very much higher. So those are some of the plus, those are some of the advantage, those are some of the tailwinds for some of these financial institutions that we're mentioning here. And Access Bank is also, if you look at the chart, Access Bank has been consolidated for past couple of years. 2 years. It's been in a range. It's been range bound for about 2 years now. So what that means, based on the I don't want to sound very technical, but it means that when it takes off, it's going to take off big time, because the more the consolidation, the more you have orders, limit orders, and all of that, and then you break out.
Is it a nice time to invest?
So I'm actually looking. I think Access Bank is in a high discount now, because Access Bank is trading at price to book is 0.4x. That is cheap. That's insanely cheap. So it is highly discounted, so I can invest now. And I'm even thinking of making some allocation to Access Bank at this point. Okay. That's a very cheap. So like I've been talking about market dislocation on this channel a number of times. I said you don't want to invest in an asset that has blown. You want to invest in an asset that's why even Zenith Bank, I said you might want to wait for it to retrace. You don't want to be an exit liquidity. You don't want to buy the top and sell the bottom. So you want to look at something that is undervalued. And I think Access Bank is undervalued. At that price to book, it is absolutely undervalued. So you might want to look at taking a position. And the fact that Access Bank has such a large asset base 52 trillion. That's for me is it shows a very strong and dominant institution, and I think the price at that price point is a good buy.
Okay.
Then the next one is UBA, United Bank for Africa. United Bank for Africa, it exists in 20 plus countries. Yeah, and so what that tells you is that they have that
coverage.
And institutional investors always want to be able to move their funds around. So UBA is going to be a bank that actually provide, and they have a very strong, their balance sheet is very strong, their capital base is very strong, their loan portfolio is also very strong. So that's like very good for corporate lending. So most of the investors that will be coming into play in the Nigerian stock market, because of the Dangote refinery listing, would want to work with very reliable banks that can actually help them in terms of accessing liquidity. We had also mentioned even in the last podcast that another thing Dangote refinery listing will bring is the downstream sector. The downstream sector will explode. And where do you think corporate lending for these downstream activities will come from? Come from the banks. And UBA, given its presence across African countries and other continents, is well positioned to allow downstream players to really be able to move funds around and ensure that they make strategic investments in these activities.
From the chart, is it a very nice place to invest?
Yeah, it's a nice place to invest.
I'm going to show the chart.
Yeah, we are going to. Yeah, we're going to show the chart. It's good to invest, but I think they have also done well. I would say this actually in the next week or so, in the next 2 weeks or so, most of these banks will do their quarterly earnings. And so when they do their Q1 earnings call, we are going to know what they have done, because most times opportunities lend itself if there's been some kind of a lower than expected performance. If they have not been able to beat on their guidance, then that could provide an opportunity, because the market, of course, naturally would sell off. That could provide an opportunity for people to actually scale in. So I'm not like going out to buy at this point. I would wait for the calls to come in, and then I'll look out for assets or bank stocks that I believe are really undervalued. Then I'll scale in. So I believe that UBA has a very strong position in terms of their coverage, and they are strategically positioned to allow investors to move funds around.
So the target of Dangote refinery listing will actually make it a better investment.
Yes, it will make it a very good investment, because it's not just, think about it, other investors across Africa would want to also be part of this, and the bank is present in 20 plus African countries, so it's easy to move large volume of funds within the banking system, within that particular bank. So meaning that people could actually move funds. Let's say someone in South Africa wants to invest in Nigeria. If you have like Access Bank, the UBA that is present, you can move funds very easily to Nigeria and take advantage of the Nigerian stock.
Okay, now the last one.
The refinery. Then the last one, of course, is GT Guaranteed Trust Corporation. That is GT Bank.
Are you expecting GTO to be number 2?
No. So we were looking at there are a few things we're looking at. Number one, we're looking at the loan book. We're looking at GT Guaranteed Trust Corporation is coming in because of two things, predominantly two things. These are actually weighted scale. I'm putting them on a weighted scale, because if you look at GTCO is not as, it doesn't have as huge of an asset base like Access Bank, for instance. But the reason why it's made the list, there are a few other banks that I could mention, like Jais Bank. Jais Bank has been doing very well. Women Bank has been doing very well. Women Bank did very well last year. But the reason why I picked these four are because, number one, they are very strategically important to this listing. These are the banks that institutional investors would most likely want to work with. And like they say, follow the money, go where the money goes. You want to swim with the sharks and not against the sharks. So GT Guaranteed Trust Corporation is positioned because of FX liquidity. GT Bank is known as one of literally only bank that you can say for certainty that if you walk into GT Bank now, right now, you can get your money in cash, USD cash. Now, what's the advantage in this regard? Advantage here is that investors are going to be looking at the capacity to get money, their money cash in US dollars, and a lot of investors, Dangote says it will pay in USD. So a lot of investors will want to get their money in USD. And that gives them the confidence that they won't have their cash trapped. Like what happened a couple of years ago, where some people were like literally could not repatriate from because of FX liquidity issues. So GT Bank wins in that. Then GT Bank also wins in technology. When you talk about, the stock market is going to, the Nigerian Exchange Group is going to witness one of the most momentous transformations in terms of the volume. Already, as I speak with you, the all share index has crossed 200,000. The NGX has done 29.35% year to date. So you're already seeing the momentum already. And so imagine what will happen with this listing. So what that tells you is that a bank that is well positioned has digital infrastructure, the digital platform that allow for easy execution of trades, easy movement of capital around, and all of those things, is well positioned. And that's where GT wins by a very long shot. GT has the digital platforms that allow, GT, you can literally transfer. It's easy for you to, whether it's FX, whether it is local, it's easy to transfer with GT. And that's what makes it very relevant in this regard. Because if you look at, I had told you, we have had an explosion in the number of retail investors, and you are going to have even more. We are expecting to like triple. So we are looking at between 15 to 18 million over the next maybe 1 or 2 years of retail traders coming. The calls I receive alone, you see people that have never even talked about, they are calling, how can we invest in the stock market? How can we in the Nigerian stock market? What options are available? This shows that Nigerians are more keen now to invest in the stock market. And I like it because you cannot build wealth working. If you have to work for every money you earn, you are going to work till you die. But you work and build capital, then you use that capital to invest. The capital now it works for you and takes advantage of compounding interest. That's how to build generational wealth. So GT Bank is already loved by the next generation of people. The retail traders want a platform where they can actually interact with digitally. So other banks are doing, though, Zenith Bank is, but when it comes about digital platforms, payments, GT Bank is number one. So that's why it's made the top 4 list.
Okay, so your 4 is
Zenith Bank, Access Bank, UBA, and GT Bank.
Okay, now you've given us your reasons why you actually selected those 4 based on the analysis. Although we are going to show the different charts of the different banks so that you actually see what we are talking about. Now, I would like you to say your final words, as we are expecting something very, very great to happen in 2 months' time. 2 months means that if Dangote lists in 2 months, we are here in June, we are here in July, but anytime these banks will actually do it. So I'd like to give you a final word as an investor, especially to those that are retail investors first, then secondly to newbies that are just coming to the stock market.
Okay, so first of all, for retail investors, you have to work with institutions that can allow you to move funds around.
Okay.
That's number one. Number two, you also want to work with institutions that can allow you to access your funds in US dollars. Okay. So, for instance, we know the arbitrage in terms of exchange rate. Sometimes it's up to 200 naira per dollar. So why don't you have that's if you try to sell to the bank to get your money in Nigerian naira. So why don't you work with an institution? By the way, I'm not marketing any institution here or any financial institution, but I'm just telling you, why don't you work on an institution that can allow you to move your funds around in US dollar, that you can actually have access to the US dollar. So that's for retail investors, And then another thing is, just know that because everybody is talking about Dangote refinery listing. It's a long-term play. It's not something that it's just a fry in the pan. It's not something that you should go in and look to exit in 2 months. That's the recipe for disaster. So that's one. Then for the newbie, please don't. We have mentioned these banks. That's what we are seeing. But you've observed one of the things I've said consistently. I have, like for example, like Zenith Bank. I'm not getting in at this point, really.
You wait for a retracement.
I'm looking for a retracement. I'm looking for people to take profit. If you look at the chart, you will see that there's literally almost no retracement whatsoever. It's been up. So of course you should. I'm looking for some correction as people take profits. Then I'll scale in. What do you see? The momentum you see now is based on the planned international listing. So you might not get the best price if you buy it at this time. I believe the only one that you can buy at this time, and I believe. The downside risk is way lower than the downside risk is way lower because it's been range bound for some time now, is Access Bank. So even if you buy at this point, the chances that it's going to go way lower is very small, very minimal, because it's still been range bound, unlike Zenith Bank that has actually taken off. Please don't just YOLO into these stocks. Try to let us wait and get some retracement, especially for those ones that have been on up and into the red, that have been very parabolic. Let's try to get some retracement before we get into them. Then also risk management. I can't say it enough. Risk management, like they always say, invest the amount you are willing and will be comfortable to lose. Have your what we call your dry powder. Have your runway. I always advise a 3 to 6 months runway in case, because sometimes no matter what we do here is just basically we are just doing prediction based on what we see on the charts and the fundamentals. Anything could happen tomorrow and these stocks could retrace. If they retrace deeply, are you going to still be afloat? So you have to make those arrangements, risk management, keep cash on the sidelines, and also have some runway so you are not stranded if the market retraces. Thank you.
All right, now I think we should end it here. It's a better time to leave it here. And also, if you actually have other conversations, maybe you have other opinions that you want us to actually analyze, drop them down and we're going to respond to you as we see them. Thank you, and this is how we bring it to an end for today's episode of Clockwise. My guest has been my stock market analyst, Mr. Kanem.
Thank you.
And please do not forget to like, subscribe, and also put on the notification bell on this channel, because every day or every week we bring amazing content. And also do not forget that the elite of 21st century are not those who do not go to school or those who will not go to school, but are those who have refused to evolve as their environment is evolving. My name is Providence. I'll see you again.